My name is CJ, and I chose the topic of sex trafficking because I had to read a pamphlet about sex trafficking through the program I'm with, and it sparked my interest to see how relevant it was to us here in Rochester.
In New York State, more than 1,000 youth under the age of 18 are trafficked each year. New York and states like it are vulnerable because they have extensive highway systems, truck stops, and borders that are close in proximity. Sexual trafficking is also attracted to large sporting events.
Children who are engaged in sex trafficking usually are kids who feel like they have to work to have a safe place to live and to have money. And so sex trafficking could be kids that are taken across county lines or across state lines to engage in sexual activity for money, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're crossing any borders. It could just be happening right here in the city of Rochester. And federal law says that if you're under the age of 18, you are not able to consent to sex, and so if kids are under the age of 18 and they're having sex because they need to work and they need the money, then they're a victim of a crime.
There's a lot of different ways that people get involved in sex trafficking. We know that for young people, homelessness is a huge issue, and just needing to use what resources they have to get their basic needs met. So young people, exchanging sex or sex acts for safety, for food, for shelter, for clothing. We know that oftentimes young people who are homeless are leaving a situation that isn't safe, or that they don't deem safe, or might not have really physically any place to go. We also know that young people are often coerced into sex trafficking for the reasons that are pretty typical of young people, which is that they're looking for a relationship, they're looking for a connection, they're looking for somebody to love them unconditionally, and so sometimes they get kind of tricked into a situation where they're with a partner who's using them for this purpose. We know that the dynamics of sex trafficking are very similar to the dynamics of child sexual abuse and of domestic violence. And we know that very often the tricks that are used to get young people involved in domestic violence and to get young people involved in situations where they're abused sexually are very similar to the tricks used to get them into sex trafficking.
In my mind, if you feel like you have to have sex to have a roof over your head, even for just one night, that's survival sex, and there's no difference between survival sex and being trafficked, I don't think, in my mind.
According to the law, no. According to the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which is the federal law that regulates, that tells us what's against the law as far as human trafficking goes, the exchange of sex for anything of value, so when I talk about survival sex, I think of kids exchanging sex acts for basic needs, for a place to stay, for safety, for drugs, to get their basic needs met. And according to the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, survival sex is human trafficking. And we provide services to young people who have engaged in survival sex the exact same way we provide services to young people who have engaged in sex trafficking, because in our mind, they're not any different.